What's up, guys? So this might be a bit controversial for some folks, but um, I hope to convince at least some of you that I'm right. So I say in the title that elitism is good sometimes, which I'm referring to not all forms of elitism, but there is an argument to be made for that as well. I'm going to stick with intellectual elitism, which is by far more commonly agreed upon than people may think. Um, Even people who openly disavow elitism in all its forms are probably intellectual elitists, as I am. We see it in, say, politics all the time. We will openly ridicule or castigate folks who we find less intelligent than their rivals. For instance, when W or Bush Jr. was running for office, he was oftenly derided for being inarticulate and probably stupid, which he is not. Um, and it came to the fore that he had like a 2.0 GPA, which meant he was an average student. However, he was an average student at Yale, which counts a lot more than having a 4.0 at some lowly ranked state university or college. Simple facts. Some people may not agree with that, but the prestige of a university matters. And the curricula at prestigious universities does tend to be harder. Again, that shouldn't be controversial. The the amount of um, mental capacity it takes to do well at a 4-year college is more than it is at a 2-year college, and more at a prestigious college and university than it is at a small 4-year university or state university. Okay, so um, people made fun of Bush, sometimes justifiably so. Um, and when it came to his second bid for election, when he was going against John Kerry, um, he again the taunting about him being less intelligent was on display, except for the fact that we found out that he and John Kerry had about the equivalent GPA, which is around 2.0. They were both part of Skulls and Bones, which was an elite secret society for for Yale students who showed promise to be in very select and prestigious career fields, and coming from the upper crust. So kind of blew that out of the water. Now, yes, he was less articulate than his rivals, but he less intelligent? No, not really. For one, let's look at IQ scores. So, IQ is one of those behavioral traits that can fall under a normal distribution for the general population, and they'll generally have the 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 middle or the average um, at the top of that bell curve at say like 100 for IQ. So under that, excuse me, would be below average. Above that, above average. Now, the average person again will have IQ score of 100. High school graduates high have an IQ score of around 105. Uh, College graduates have an IQ score of an average of 120, which is 2 centiles above average. So that's the average college student, which means there's some that's going to be beyond that. And for graduate students, the average is 130. He has a graduate business degree, which puts his IQ somewhere between 120 to 130, if not more. But the problem is, there are other cognitive abilities besides intelligence that factor into people's success and decision making processes and stuff like that. Bush wasn't the most rational person. Let's be clear. But was he less intelligent? No. However, people were still quick to jump on the fact that he seemed less intelligent. We've done the same thing with Trump. And again, I don't really want to defend Trump, but he did graduate from an Ivy League school, which means he has an IQ score of at least 120 on average. So he may be irrational. He may have erratic behavior, and he's probably suffering some possible early effects of dementia, maybe. However, he's not dumb. He's a good con man. He's inarticulate. But again, those don't mean he's less intelligent. If we were to judge, say, Thomas Jefferson by today's standards, he stuttered heavily and he wouldn't have been a great orator. We might think he wasn't very bright. However, when you read his works, he was a quite intelligent guy. I'm not saying he was a good guy, because that's a whole different subject. But he was clearly a very accomplished and intelligent man. I'm not saying that Trump nor Bush Jr. are on his level. I'm not making that comparison. I'm saying that we can't judge by one's level of verbal acumen alone. However, it goes into the fact that we are intellectual leaders. When we look at our business leaders, we look at their accomplishments. When people look at people's CVs and resumes, they look for their intellectual and academic accomplishments. There's no getting around it that we are all, whether we want to or not, intellectual leaders. We judge each other by such, or lack thereof, accomplishments all the time. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's only bad when that's the only thing that we consider. But yeah, intellectual elitism is good and necessary on many factors. When we talk about certain experts who don't seem very knowledgeable in their fields, Umar Johnson, we often deride them as having a crackerback, well, for the older folks, a crackerjack box degree. Crackerjack, for you young folks, was a very nasty snack that they used to feed us that was like caramel covered popcorn with glazed peanuts. And looking at it now, it tasted horrible. But for the most part, I used to like digging into it to get the little free prize out of it. But it came to be a symbol of something that wasn't worth of very much value. So we said that person has a crackerjack box degree, Dr. Umar Johnson. Excuse me, phlegm. But in any case, we say that of lawyers who seem to not do very well in their field, like we'll judge them by if they went to evening school to earn their law degree. We want, when it comes to our medical issues, to have the best of the best of the best. We want the Harvard medical doctor with the 4.0 GPA that graduated magna cum laude. Probably not going to get that, but depending on your managed care situation. But that's what we prefer. We don't want the person who earned C's in medical school. We want the one who got straight A's. So again, that's when we intellectual elitism is good. We want people who handle our finances to have come from superior schools and had superior grades. We want people who handle our bodies to have superior grades and went to superior schools and had all the relevant research and other things required that we would be confident in them taking care of us. We want our lawyers to be the best of the best, which means gone to the best schools, had the best GPAs. That's not controversial, I don't think. When it comes to scientists and dealing with public health, like recently with the pandemic, we want to ensure that the people in charge are at the top of their fields and had the best educations and backgrounds. That's not controversial. That means we're all intellectual leaders. It's okay to admit it. Now, if you want to acknowledge being elitist on other issues, as you know, as far as being a social or financial elitist, have at it, Hoss. I'm not arguing that, but it can be a case made for that. I'm arguing simply for intellectual elitism. And we see it in other things, like coming from a philosophy background, it was almost it was almost a necessary condition that I have avow some form of intellectual elitism. Like a favorite quote was, "I'd rather be Socrates dissatisfied than a pig satisfied," meaning that there are higher forms of pleasure than others. That's surely an elitist stance, but I don't I don't see fault with it. Um, it kind of goes into saying that it might be better to go out and see I don't know, like a, a a play on Broadway than to go watch some raunchy movie, or it might be rather better, excuse me, better, better to read a good book than to just sit there and veg out watching Netflix. So, you know, those forms of intellectual elitism are palpable. Um, Whether you disagree or not, I mean, leave it in the comments. And if you agree with the other forms of elitism, particularly like social elitism, um, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. I'm kind of agnostic when it comes to that. I can see both sides of that, so I don't have a strong opinion on that either way. But as far as it connecting with intellectual elitism, I can certainly acknowledge that. But I'm curious what you think. Like I said, intellectualism, the intellectual elitism, it exists for a reason. Sorry for all the tongue ties. A lot of vowels being mixed here. um, but yeah, next time you make fun of a politician for not being too savvy, and that's going to happen the next election cycle, guaranteed. Uh, Next time you wonder whether this medical doctor is really any good. Um, Next time you want to question someone's credentials, just remember you're being an intellectual elitist. But I'm just a contrarian.